Progress feels invisible until it suddenly explodes. You can spend months, sometimes years, doing everything right and still feel like you're standing still. You push, you build, you try to stay consistent, and it seems like the world doesn't notice. It feels unfair, almost cruel, that so much effort produces so little visible result. But that's how real change works. It hides while it's forming. The beginning of every breakthrough is quiet. It's not dramatic, it's not exciting, and it rarely looks like success. It's often full of doubt, repetition, and long hours of work that seem to go nowhere. Yet, those unseen moments are the foundation of every visible transformation that will ever happen in your life. What you can't see is that every small action, every long night, every problem solved in silence is aligning something deeper. An invisible momentum that keeps building underneath everything. There's a strange illusion about success that fools people. They think progress should feel fast. They want results to match their effort immediately. But real growth is exponential, not linear. In the beginning, it feels flat, painfully slow, and unrewarding. You might work for a year and see nothing. You might work for 2 and see a little. Suddenly, in 1 month, it all multiplies. The recognition, the results, the confidence. People will look at that moment and call it luck. They'll say it happened suddenly. They'll never understand how many invisible hours it took to reach that point. The truth is, progress accumulates quietly until it reaches a tipping point. And when it does, everything accelerates so quickly it almost feels unreal. That explosion of growth isn't magic. It's compound effort finally breaking through resistance. The mind hates slow progress because it's wired to seek immediate feedback. You go to the gym for a week and you expect to see change. You post your work online and you expect attention. You try something new and you expect validation. When it doesn't come, you start doubting yourself. But that doubt is a trap. What you don't realize is that a growth is happening beneath the surface, in the systems you're building, in the discipline you're creating, in the mindset that's strengthening with every silent effort. You're reprogramming yourself to become the person who can handle success when it finally arrives. Every day that feels like nothing is happening is actually preparing you for everything that's coming. Think of it like launching a rocket. Most of the fuel is burned just to overcome gravity, just to lift off the ground. The rocket doesn't rise easily. It shakes, it resists, it feels the full weight of the world pulling it down. Once it escapes Earth's pull, it starts moving faster with less energy. That's how success works. The first stages are the hardest because you're fighting against resistance, fear, doubt, old habits, and the expectations of others. It feels like you're pushing against gravity itself. Once you break through that invisible barrier, once your consistency escapes the pull of frustration, you start to rise faster, and the results start to multiply effortlessly. Every struggle you faced early on becomes the thrust that keeps you in motion later. When you're in the process of building something, whether it's a business, a skill, or a dream, there will be long stretches where it feels like absolutely nothing is moving. That's the test. The invisible stage is the filter that separates those who truly want it from those who only wanted the feeling of progress. The ones who keep going through the silence, through the doubt, through the invisible grind, those are the ones who reach the explosion phase. Because the truth is, The world rewards endurance, not excitement. Anybody can be excited for a week. Few can stay committed for a year with no visible reward. But those who do are the ones who change everything. Not because they were the most talented, because they refused to stop moving forward when nothing seemed to work. People often talk about overnight success, but that concept doesn't exist. There's no such thing as overnight success. There are only years of invisible work followed by a visible result. When you see someone suddenly rise, what you're actually seeing is the surface layer of a deep, unseen structure built over time. The recognition is the tip of the iceberg. The real work lies beneath. That's why you can't compare your current stage to someone else's highlight moment. You're in the part they didn't show. The grind, the failure, the uncertainty, the invisible progress. If you stop now, you'll never see what's waiting just beyond this phase. But if you keep going, you'll eventually experience that moment when everything clicks, when people start noticing, when you realize that all those nights of effort were not wasted. They were necessary. There's a principle that governs almost everything in life. Persistence beats intensity. Doing something consistently, even imperfectly, will always outperform doing it perfectly for a short time. Every small effort adds up. Every repetition compounds. The world doesn't move because of massive one-time actions. It moves because of relentless, consistent micro actions repeated over time. You may not feel the weight of progress daily. Every step forward changes your trajectory slightly. And when you extend that trajectory far enough, those small angles become massive differences. 1 degree of effort repeated 1,000 times creates a completely different future. Progress is like a programming reality. Every time you act, you're writing a new line of code into your life. At first, those lines don't seem to do much. A habit here, a lesson there. But eventually, you realize you've built an entire operating system from scratch. The system starts running smoother, faster, more intelligently. You become more capable, more confident, more efficient. That's when everything starts changing faster than you can imagine. It's not that the world suddenly got easier. It's that your foundation became stronger. You're no longer learning how to start. You're operating at a higher frequency where results naturally align with your effort. The reason most people give up before the explosion is because they misread the silence. They mistake the lack of results for the lack of progress. They think if nothing is visible, nothing is happening. The opposite is true. The invisible stage is where all the transformation is taking place. It's where you build habits, develop resilience, strengthen focus, and learn patience. It's where your character is built. Results come after identity, and identity is forged in silence. That's why it's so important to keep working even when nobody is watching. To stay disciplined when it feels like nobody cares. Because one day, everyone will see what you were building all along. You have to learn to fall in love with the process more than the outcome. If your motivation depends only on visible progress, you'll quit too soon. But if you find meaning in the act of improving, in the quiet satisfaction of building something real, then you'll never run out of energy. The process becomes its own reward. That's how innovators, creators, and dreamers keep going when others stop. They understand that slow progress isn't failure, it's calibration. Every attempt is refining the system, removing friction, teaching you what not to do. When that system becomes efficient enough, it starts producing outcomes at a speed that surprises even you. There's also a psychological shift that happens during this invisible phase. In the beginning, you rely on motivation. You need inspiration to move. But as you continue, you stop depending on motivation and start operating from discipline. That's when things change. Discipline is not emotional, it's logical. It doesn't ask if you feel like it, it just executes. That shift from motivation to discipline is what carries you through the invisible parts of progress. Because the truth is, nobody feels motivated every day. But the ones who keep moving anyway, those are the ones who cross the invisible threshold and reach the stage where everything changes rapidly. When progress finally becomes visible, it happens so fast it almost feels unfair. The same people who ignored you suddenly start paying attention. The same effort that once gave you nothing now gives you more than you imagined. But it only feels sudden because you lived through the part that wasn't visible. Everyone else is seeing the explosion. You're remembering the silence. And that's the beauty of it. Knowing you stayed when you had every reason to leave. Knowing that your persistence turned invisible effort into visible transformation. That kind of satisfaction can't be bought. It's earned through endurance. There will be days when you'll doubt if anything is working. Days when you question your purpose, your timing, your ability. On those days, remember that progress isn't linear. It's cumulative. Every effort counts. Every repetition matters. You may not see the shift immediately, but it's happening. The system is adapting. Your skills are improving. Your resilience is strengthening. You're building pressure in the engine of your own destiny. And one day, that engine will ignite so powerfully that you'll look back and realize the invisible phase was the most important part of your journey. It was the time when you were being prepared, not punished. The silence wasn't a sign of failure. It was a signal that transformation was underway. So when you feel stuck, when it feels like nothing's moving, remind yourself that invisible doesn't mean inactive. Progress hides so that you can grow without distractions. It hides so you can focus on becoming, not performing. It hides so that when everything finally does change, you'll be ready, not surprised. Because real success doesn't just require achievement, it requires capacity. And that capacity is built in the quiet, unseen moments when nobody's clapping, when nobody's watching, when nobody believes except you. Failure isn't defeat, it's data. Every time you fail, you're collecting information the world hides from everyone else. You're running an experiment in real life, and experiments don't fail. They reveal variables. Each setback tells you what doesn't work, what needs improvement, and where your limits are right now. It's not personal, it's informational. The difference between those who quit and those who succeed is perspective. One group sees failure as a verdict, the other sees it as feedback. The ones who make it far never escape failure. They just interpret it differently. They extract patterns, adjust their systems, and try again with better precision. Progress, at its core, is simply the process of failing intelligently, learning faster than others, refusing to stop because of temporary results. The world tends to romanticize success, but hide the thousands of micro failures behind it. You see the product, not the prototype. You see the breakthrough, not the breakdown. Every innovation, every masterpiece, every discovery comes from a chain of missteps that taught something new. Failure is how progress speaks. It communicates where you are misaligned with reality and where you need to calibrate. You can't innovate without breaking things, and you can't grow without breaking patterns. The universe rewards curiosity and resilience, not perfection. Those who fear mistakes never reach discovery because they stay inside the boundaries of what's safe. But safe is another word for stagnant. The moment you stop risking failure, you also stop advancing. When you experience failure, you're standing on the edge of valuable information. Most people turn away too soon because it feels uncomfortable. Their ego gets involved. They take it personally, as if failure is proof of their inadequacy. But failure is neutral. It doesn't care about how you feel. It's pure signal. Feedback from reality telling you what needs to evolve. If you strip away the emotion and study the signal, you start to see patterns that others miss. That's how you gain an advantage by a lot. Every failure gives you data about timing, technique, environment, energy, decision making. Each one refines your process. You become more strategic, more aware, more capable. Over time, your failure database becomes your greatest competitive edge. You stop fearing loss because you've turned loss into information. The people who achieve extraordinary things are not those who never fall. They're the ones who built a relationship with failure that's rooted in logic, not fear. They understand that failure is as an essential step in the engineering of success. They fail faster, not recklessly, but systematically. They measure, analyze, and adjust. To the outside world, it looks like persistence. Internally, it's iteration, each setback upgrading the system. The ones who fail often develop an emotional immunity. They don't see failure as a reflection of their worth, but as a calibration of their method. And when you reach that point, you become unstoppable because nothing external can break you anymore. Every obstacle turns into a lesson. Every rejection into redirection. Every loss into leverage. Imagine building a rocket. You test an engine and it explodes. That's not a tragedy, it's a test report. You don't throw away the project. You study the cause, redesign the part, and try again. The explosion gave you knowledge that success could never give. It exposed weaknesses in the design before they became catastrophic later. Life works exactly like that. Failures are stress tests for your systems, not punishments for your ambition. They reveal flaws that need strengthening. If you can approach your life like an engineer instead of a judge, you stop taking failure personally. You start seeing it as data you can use. And once you do that, failure loses its power to paralyze you. Most people underestimate how much failure they can survive. They think one major setback means they're finished. But the truth is, resilience expands through repetition. The more you fail and recover, the more adaptable you become. You start to see that failure is never fatal unless you decide to stop trying. Every time you get up after falling, your confidence increases. Not because you succeeded, but because you proved you can continue without success. That's what makes you durable. In a world full of people chasing comfort, durability becomes your superpower. It allows you to stay in the game long enough for probability to shift in your favor. Failure also burns away illusion. It forces honesty. It shows you who you are when everything comfortable disappears. That's why it's valuable. Success can make you complacent, but failure keeps you sharp. It humbles you enough to learn, to listen, to adapt. It resets your perspective and strengthens your emotional endurance. When you start treating failure as an ally instead of an enemy, you gain something rare: clarity. You begin to understand what truly matters, what's worth pursuing, and what's just noise. Failure strips you down to purpose. It reminds you why you started in the first place. There's a scientific beauty to failure if you look closely. It obeys the laws of evolution. Nature doesn't punish failure, it uses it. Species adapt through trial and error. The environment gives feedback, and the organism adjusts. Those who learn fastest survive. You're part of the same system. Your failures are environmental feedback, information about what your current strategy can't handle. Adaptation is success at the molecular level. The problem is humans attach emotion to it and call it defeat. If you take emotion out, failure becomes fascinating. It's an intelligence loop. You act, observe, adjust, act again. Each cycle refines your model of reality. The faster you complete these loops, the smarter you become. The reason so many dreams die is not because people lack talent, but because they misinterpret failure. They assume that struggling means they're not good enough, when in reality, struggling means they're evolving. Growth is messy. It involves breaking old versions of yourself, losing balance, recalibrating your expectations. It's not supposed to feel graceful. The caterpillar doesn't complain inside the cocoon. It disintegrates before it transforms. That destruction is part of the process. Your failures are that cocoon. Uncomfortable, chaotic, but necessary for reinvention. If you quit inside that phase, you never see what you were becoming. To fail intelligently is to observe without judgment. It's to say, this didn't work, but now I know why. Every failure gives you coordinates that move you closer to success. It's like navigating through fog. Each mistake clears a small piece of the map. Eventually, you have enough data to see the full route. Most people stop too early because they expect perfection before they've explored the terrain. Exploration always involves wrong turns. The goal isn't to avoid them, but to shorten them through awareness. If you treat every mistake as a data point instead of a dead end, you'll keep improving while others are still complaining. Failure also forces innovation. When the old way collapses, you're forced to invent a new one. That's how progress happens. The most creative ideas often come from frustration, from something breaking that forces you to think differently. If everything always worked, you'd never question anything. You'd never push beyond the current limits. Failure introduces friction, and friction sparks creativity. It challenges the assumption that there's only one way to succeed. It shows you alternate routes that you would never have seen otherwise. That's why innovators often fail more than anyone else. They're constantly testing the edges of what's possible. They're not afraid of breaking systems because they know systems improve through stress. Every time you fail, you're also training emotional endurance. You're learning how to separate your identity from your outcome. When something doesn't work, it doesn't mean you're worthless. It means your approach needs refinement. That distinction is powerful. Once you stop tying your self-worth to results, you gain freedom to experiment without fear. You start taking smarter risks because you're no longer afraid of embarrassment. You begin to operate with curiosity instead of anxiety, and curiosity is the fuel of progress. It keeps you moving forward even when things don't make sense yet. There's another reason failure is so powerful. It builds empathy. When you've fallen, you understand others who are still falling. You become more grounded, more human. You stop judging people for being imperfect because you know what it feels like to rebuild from nothing. That humility makes you a better leader, a better teammate, a better creator. Failure humanizes ambition. It teaches you that success isn't about dominance, it's about contribution. When you've been broken, you value building things that last. That perspective only comes from experience, and failures is the fastest teacher. Most people want certainty before they act. They want guarantees that it will work. But progress doesn't come with guarantees, it comes with experiments. If you only move when success is guaranteed, you'll move too late. You have to move while uncertainty still exists, knowing that failure might happen. And that's fine, because failure is just the price of knowledge. The faster you fail, the faster you learn what doesn't work, and the sooner you discover what does. It's not recklessness, it's accelerated learning. Those who embrace that principle evolve faster than those who hide from it. They turn trial and error into momentum. You can trace every major advancement in history back to someone who refused to let failure stop them. Electricity, flight, medicine, space travel, all built on thousands of failed attempts. If those people had stopped at the first, the 10th, or even the 100th setback, the world would be decades behind. Progress is cumulative, not instant. Every failure adds a piece to the puzzle. You might not complete the puzzle yourself, but someone else will build on your data. That's how humanity evolves. You're not just failing for yourself, you're contributing to the collective experiment of progress. What matters most is how you process failure. Some people feel it once and let it define them forever. Others feel it every day and use it as fuel. The outcome depends on which category you choose. If you see failure as proof you're incapable, you'll stop growing. But if you see it as proof you're in motion, you'll keep going until the pattern changes, because it will change. Patterns always change when energy persists long enough. The universe rewards those who continue running experiments long after everyone else stopped collecting data. Failure isn't the end of the story. It's the most valuable chapter. It's the part where you become the kind of person who can handle what you're asking for. You're not being denied success, you're being trained for it. The discomfort is evidence of progress. The confusion is evidence of growth. And the mistakes are evidence of movement. The only true failure is refusing to learn. Everything else is research. The future rewards those who endure uncertainty. Every major transformation in human history was born from chaos, from moments when no one knew what would happen next. Progress never comes from comfort, it comes from the unknown. The people who shape the future aren't the ones who wait for clarity. They're the ones who act while the outcome is still uncertain. They operate when others hesitate, experiment when others panic, and believe in a vision that hasn't been proven yet. That's what separates those who make history from those who watch it happen. The future is a field of probability, and the brave are the ones who step into it without guarantees, trusting that they'll figure it out as they go. Uncertainty is the natural environment of innovation. When you create something new, by definition, you are venturing into territory that no one has mapped. There's no instruction manual, no clear path, and no assurance of success. That's why most people avoid it. They'd rather follow a route someone else already confirmed than build their own. But the paradox is that the most valuable discoveries only exist beyond the edge of certainty. The world you know can only produce results you've already seen. To access something extraordinary, you have to tolerate risk, confusion, and moments where you have no idea whether what you're doing will work. The more comfortable you become with not knowing, the more capable you become of finding what others miss. Enduring uncertainty doesn't mean pretending you're fearless. It means acting despite fear. It means learning to function in the middle of doubt, to keep moving when you have no clear feedback, to trust that the process will reveal the path as you move forward. Most people wait for confidence before they act, but confidence doesn't precede action. It follows it. You earn it by surviving uncertainty again and again. Each time you step into the unknown and adapt, your brain learns that uncertainty isn't fatal, that you can handle it. Over time, uncertainty becomes less of a threat and more of a signal that you're growing. You start to recognize that discomfort is not a reason to stop, but a sign that you're exactly where you're supposed to be in any bold pursuit. There's always a phase where nothing makes sense. You're building something that doesn't have proof yet. You're explaining your vision to people who can't see it. You're investing energy into a future that exists only in your imagination. That's the hardest part of creation. The time between effort and evidence. Most people quit during that gap because uncertainty feels unbearable. They mistake confusion for failure. But the truth is, uncertainty is proof that you're doing something original. You're stepping into a timeline no one has walked before. The chaos you feel isn't a problem. It's the birthplace of new order. The universe doesn't hand over breakthroughs easily. It hides them inside uncertainty, waiting for those willing to stay long enough to uncover them. The ones who master uncertainty learn to anchor themselves to vision, not outcomes. When you don't know what's next, the only stable thing you have is purpose. Vision gives direction when data is missing. It becomes the internal compass that guides your decisions when logic alone isn't enough. That's why belief in your mission is critical, not blind faith, but conviction based on principle. When you truly believe in what you're building, uncertainty stops being paralyzing and starts becoming a challenge you're eager to solve. Every unknown becomes a puzzle, every obstacle becomes a test, and every delay becomes a calibration. You stop asking, will this work? And start asking, what do I need to learn to make this work? That shift in mindset is what allows you to keep going when others give up. The modern world trains people to seek control, predictability, and immediate feedback. Algorithms tell us what to expect, and systems are built to minimize uncertainty. But the irony is, those same systems create stagnation. When everything is predictable, nothing new happens. The future belongs to those who can handle volatility, who can stay calm when patterns break. Uncertainty is not the enemy of progress. It's the environment progress requires. If you can thrive where others freeze, you become irreplaceable. You become the one who can navigate chaos without losing direction. The future needs builders who don't need permission, thinkers who don't need proof, and dreamers who don't wait for stability before taking the first step. Every major advancement in technology, art, human development came from people who stood in the fog of uncertainty and refused to leave. They didn't have all the answers, when they began. They didn't wait for validation or resources. They just started, and the path revealed itself through motion. Uncertainty rewards movement. You don't figure things out by standing still. You figure them out by experimenting, by failing forward, by adjusting through real feedback instead of theoretical prediction. The ones who wait for certainty are forever planning. The ones who move in uncertainty are forever evolving. The difference between both is that one group demands guarantees, and the other understands that guarantees come only after you've built something that works. Uncertainty is also the forge of leadership. Anyone can lead when everything is going right, when the path is clear, when the metrics are rising. But true leadership shows itself when things stop making sense. When markets crash, when systems break, when people lose faith, that's when endurance under uncertainty becomes the defining quality. Great leaders don't have fewer doubts. They just have stronger discipline. They keep their composure when others panic. They don't rush to control everything. They focus on controlling themselves, their reactions, their focus, their integrity. They understand that chaos doesn't destroy everyone. It exposes who was built for it. And the ones who are built for it are those who've spent years training their mind to stay calm in the unknown. There's an internal war that happens inside you when uncertainty stretches too long. One part wants to move forward, the other wants to retreat to safety. You start overthinking, analyzing every possibility, searching for signs that it's worth it. But overanalysis is the enemy of momentum. You can't think your way to clarity, you act your way there. Every decision, even a small one, generates data that reduces uncertainty. The more you move, the more you learn, the more the fog clears. The worst thing you can do in uncertainty is freeze. Momentum is power because it breaks the illusion that you're stuck. Once you move, you create feedback. Feedback becomes direction. The future isn't a destination you arrive at. It's something you construct through choices made in uncertainty. Every decision you make today alters the probabilities of tomorrow. That's why waiting for the right time is an illusion. There is no perfect moment. There is only now, messy, unpredictable, incomplete. The right time emerges because of your action, not before it. The world is built by people who start before they're ready. Readiness is a side effect of motion. The moment you decide to act, you begin transforming uncertainty into structure. You start pulling the future into the present through execution. Uncertainty also tests patience. It stretches your ability to persist without reward, to hold a vision without proof, to trust timing without control. This is where emotional intelligence becomes crucial. It's easy to stay positive when things are working. It's much harder when you have no signal that they ever will. But that's the threshold where greatness begins. Those who can remain stable in long periods of ambiguity develop emotional gravity, a quiet strength that attracts opportunities, people, and resources. The universe seems to conspire in favor of those who refuse to break under the weight of not knowing. Because persistence in uncertainty signals belief. Belief is a force multiplier. Sometimes uncertainty lasts so long it starts to feel permanent. You start wondering if maybe you're wasting time chasing illusions. That's where you need perspective. Every system, natural, personal, or professional, goes through phases of instability before transformation. Stars collapse before they ignite. Forests burn before they renew. Human lives are no different. The uncertainty you're experiencing isn't destruction. It's reconfiguration. It's your life reorganizing itself to handle a higher version of reality. If you hold on long enough, the chaos becomes order. The key is endurance. Staying calm while the old version of your life dismantles to make space for the new one. Those who endure uncertainty eventually build an instinct for timing. They can sense when to move, when to pause, when to adjust. That instinct only comes from experience, from being lost enough times that you no longer fear being lost. You develop intuition not by reading about the path, but by walking it in the dark. Each uncertain phase sharpens your internal compass, builds confidence in your decision-making, and teaches you to trust your ability to adapt. That adaptability becomes your ultimate advantage. When others break because the plan changed, you evolve because you never expected it to stay the same. Uncertainty also creates authenticity. When you're in the unknown, you can't fake competence for long. You have to rely on curiosity, humility, and creativity. You have to admit what you don't know and still find a way forward. That honesty builds trust, not only with others, but with yourself. You stop pretending to have everything figured out and start embracing the reality that nobody does. That's liberating. It frees you from the pressure of perfection and allows you to focus on progress. The people who thrive in the future aren't the ones who know everything. They're the ones who know how to learn anything. The future is moving faster than ever. Technology, economies, systems, everything is shifting in real time. The ones who survive and succeed will not be the most talented or even the most intelligent. They'll be the most adaptable. They'll be the ones who can pivot quickly, think independently, and make decisions without needing perfect information. They'll be the ones who can live with uncertainty as a constant companion, not an occasional visitor. The faster the world changes, the more valuable endurance under uncertainty becomes. Because when everything else is unstable, the ability to stay grounded where heads by aloft is the ultimate form of stability. So when you find yourself lost, uncertain, or afraid of what's next, remember this: you're not off track. You're on the frontier. The discomfort you feel is the signal that you're building something that hasn't existed before. Everyone who's ever done something meaningful has walked through this fog. They questioned themselves, doubted their vision, faced silence and rejection. But they kept moving, not because they knew it would work, because they refused to stop searching for what could. The future belongs to those who can stay calm in the storm, who can walk through uncertainty and still believe that something incredible waits on the other side. Discomfort is a signal of growth, not pain. Every living system evolves through stress. Muscles grow when they are torn and rebuilt. Minds expand when they are challenged and stretched. Comfort feels good, but creates stagnation, while discomfort feels difficult but builds capacity. The mistake most people make is misinterpreting discomfort as danger. They pull back the moment they feel pressure, assuming something is wrong, when in reality, something important is happening. Growth never feels safe. It happens at the edge of your ability, in the place where what you know starts to collapse and what you could become begins to form. The difference between the ones who grow and the ones who stay the same is that the first group learns to stay longer in that uncomfortable zone Discomfort is your mind's way of signaling you're moving beyond familiar limits. It's the internal alarm that tells you you're entering new territory. That feeling of resistance, frustration, or fatigue isn't punishment. It's progress being measured in real time. When you lift weights, your muscles send pain signals because they're being pushed beyond capacity. But those same signals are what trigger adaptation. The same rule applies to life, business, relationships, and purpose. If something feels hard, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It means you're changing. You're upgrading the system. Comfort preserves what already exists. Discomfort builds what could exist. If you want a stronger life, the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot, you have to endure the moments when your old version starts breaking down so the new one can take shape. Most people spend their lives running from discomfort. They design routines, environments, and habits that minimize friction. They want things to feel easy, predictable, smooth. But the cost of a frictionless life is stagnation. When nothing challenges you, nothing changes you. You become efficient at staying the same. Progress requires friction. It demands resistance. Without pressure, no diamond forms, and without struggle, no transformation occurs. The discomfort you avoid today becomes the limitation you live with tomorrow. The difference between mediocrity and mastery is not talent, but tolerance. The ability to sit with the heat of discomfort long enough for it to forge you into something stronger. And discomfort doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're in motion. It's a sign that your system is adapting to a new level of demand. Every skill, every discipline, every breakthrough begins with resistance. The first attempts are awkward. The process feels unnatural. Your mind protests because it wants to conserve energy. That mental resistance is the gate you must pass through to reach growth. If you stop at the first sign of struggle, you never give your brain or body the chance to adapt. But if you stay consistent, something amazing happens. The hard thing becomes normal. What was once uncomfortable becomes easy. That's the proof that you've grown. Discomfort doesn't last forever. It transforms into strength. When you persist through it, there's a simple law of progress. Everything you want lies on the other side of discomfort. Every meaningful pursuit requires you to face temporary pain, uncertainty, or fear. The reason most people never experience deep fulfillment is because they confuse discomfort with danger. They see fear and turn back instead of walking through it. But fear is just a compass pointing toward growth. It highlights where your potential lies. You'll always feel resistance when you approach expansion because your mind wants safety, not success. The human brain evolved to survive, not to thrive. So it treats discomfort as a threat, even when it's exactly what you need. Learning to override that instinct to act even when it feels hard is how you evolve. When you embrace discomfort as feedback instead of punishment, you start to see patterns. You notice that the moments of greatest resistance are followed by breakthroughs. You notice that every time you overcome one level of discomfort, the next challenge feels smaller. You start to develop mental endurance. Endurance is not just physical toughness, it's emotional stability under stress. It's the ability to remain centered when everything inside you wants to quit. Endurance comes only from exposure, from voluntarily stepping into hard situations and refusing to run. Discomfort trains resilience. It teaches your mind that pain isn't permanent and difficulty isn't defeat. Each time you survive what you thought would break you. You raise your internal threshold for challenge. There's also a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Pain is the signal that you're growing. Suffering is the story you attach to that pain. When you resist discomfort or complain about it, you multiply it. But when you accept it as part of the process, it loses its power. Acceptance turns pain into purpose. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That single shift changes everything. The same discomfort that once made you bitter now makes you better. It becomes a teacher instead of a tormentor. Growth always demands payment, and discomfort is the currency. Look at how nature operates. Trees strengthen their roots during storms.